Hello and welcome to Sleepy Science Story. This is your time to slow down, to let the world soften at the edges and drift somewhere quieter for a while. Tonight, we're going to tiptoe into one of the oldest, gentlest mysteries of all, the search for someone or something out there in the dark. Not in the way science fiction shouts about, with buzzing ships and green faces, but in the quieter, more poetic way, like wondering if another soul is staring up at the same stars. So curl up, take a breath, and let your thoughts float like starlight across the vast quiet of space. I do hope this story isn't so interesting it keeps you awake, but if it does, at least you'll be dreaming of galaxies, golden records, and the soft hum of a cosmic question still waiting to be answered. There's a question that floats quietly at the edge of every curious mind. Not loud, not insistent, but gentle, like a dandelion seed carried on a breeze. It's the kind of question that doesn't demand an answer right away. It waits, patiently. And it goes something like this. Are we alone? Not in the dramatic way that movies imagine, with shiny spaceships and orchestras swelling in the background, but in the quiet way that catches you when you're looking at the stars and the night feels a little too vast for comfort. The question doesn't shout, it whispers, not from the heavens exactly, but from inside us, from that part of the human spirit that's always looked out into the dark and wondered who else might be looking back. Long before telescopes, before satellites, and radio waves and solar panels unfolded like metal petals in orbit, there were just eyes and stories. People have always watched the sky, around campfires, across cold ocean decks, from quiet windowsills. And when they did, they often imagined they weren't alone, not out of fear but out of hope. Because deep down, we seem to want company. Not the kind that knocks at the door, but the kind that shares the same universe. Someone to marvel with. Someone who also saw Saturn rise on a clear night and thought, how beautiful. The question of life beyond Earth isn't new. It's ancient. It's older than most of our words for stars and sky, but only recently have we had the tools to ask it in a scientific way. Not just in poems and dreams, but in data, in sensors, in long silences measured in radio static. Still, even now, science carries the question gently. It doesn't try to force an answer. Instead, it listens, with big dishes pointed toward the dark, with delicate instruments wrapped in gold foil drifting far from home, with algorithms sifting through signals in the middle of the night while most of us sleep peacefully, unaware. What's quietly fascinating is that even after all this time, with all our technology and telescopes and careful listening, we still don't know. The silence isn't disappointing, it's strangely comforting. It means the story isn't over. There's still room for wonder, still room for drifting thoughts and drowsy imagination. Maybe, somewhere out there, a different kind of life is doing the same thing, pausing, wondering, listening, and maybe, just maybe, two dreams are slowly drifting toward each other across the vast ocean of stars, carried softly on the same cosmic wind. Nestled among the green hills of Puerto Rico, there once lay a giant ear, curved and still, listening to the sky. The Arecibo Observatory was not flashy. It did not beam powerful signals or flashlights into space. It simply listened, patient as a cat, to the endless murmur of the cosmos. Its vast dish spread across a natural sinkhole like a silver pond, catching whispers that had crossed light years before, spilling gently into its receiver. It was a place where the air felt thick with waiting, and even the birds seemed to sing a little softer, as though they knew something important was happening in the quiet. In the daytime, sunlight slanted, across the panels, glinting like fish scales. At night it transformed into a black mirror under the stars. While most of the world slept, Arecibo was awake, its great dish tilted towards some distant point, scanning for the faintest echo of a voice not our own. Not many people think about what it means to listen for something that may never arrive. It takes a kind of patience that feels almost old-fashioned, like writing a letter to someone whose address you do not know, sealing it with care, and then waiting by the door for an answer that might not come for centuries. But waiting was exactly what Arecibo was built for. The signals from distant stars arrive thin as smoke, weaker than the buzz of a mosquito lost in a sea of cosmic static. The dish would gather them up and feed them to computers, which sifted through the noise like fingers combing sand. Most nights there was nothing unusual, just the steady background hum of space. But sometimes, a strange spike in the data would appear, a hint of a pattern, a possibility. The scientists would lean in a little closer, hearts quietly racing, only to find it was a satellite, a glitch, or a stray echo of our own transmissions bouncing back. And yet, no one stopped listening, because each night carried its own kind of magic. The stars wheeled slowly overhead, the jungle whispered, and the dish kept its vigil. Somewhere, maybe, a signal was travelling, too faint for us yet, too far away to reach us now, or maybe it had already passed through, a soft hello lost in the static of our unprepared ears. The beauty of Arecibo was not in what it found, but in what it represented. The act of listening itself, without expectation, without hurry, like holding a seashell to your ear and imagining the ocean that shaped it. When the observatory finally fell silent, its panels collapsed and its cables broken. It felt less like the end of a project and more like a pause in a conversation. The sky is still there. The stars still send their quiet signals. And somewhere, perhaps on another world, another ear is tilted upward, waiting, just as patient as we once were. Far from the noise of traffic and ticking clocks, drifting silently into the deep cold of space, there is a tiny spacecraft still traveling. It moves without urgency, without destination, and without a plan to come home. This is Voyager. Not one craft, but two sisters, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, launched during the late summer of 1977. They slipped beyond Earth with a calm sort of determination, like notes on the wind, headed outward into the unknown. And aboard each of them, nestled within the wires and panels and blinking instruments, is a small shimmering disc, a golden record. Not gold like coins or crowns, but gold like memory, like a keepsake. It isn't a music album in the usual sense. It's more like a message in a bottle, written by a whole planet. Etched into its grooves are greetings in 55 human languages. There is a mother's kiss. There are songs of whales. There is the sound of wind, of thunder, of a human heartbeat. There is Chuck Berry, and there is Bach. There is laughter, and there is silence. It is not a perfect representation of who we are, but a snapshot of our hopes, a whisper of our story, drifting out with the voyagers, one slow mile per second. The idea was poetic, even from the beginning. If intelligent life ever finds these little crafts, long after our own species may be gone, the record will be a kind of handshake across time, a hopeful hello. It says, quietly and with great care, that we were here, that we thought of others, that we listened. The cover of the record is a puzzle in itself. A map, written in lines and circles, to help anyone who finds it understand how to play it, how to find us, how to see and hear who we were. The odds of someone finding it are vanishingly small. The distances between stars are enormous, the darkness deep and unblinking, but the gesture was never really about odds. It was about wonder, about sending out something of ourselves, not because we expect a reply, but because not sending anything at all would feel too quiet. And so Voyager drifts, past the planets, past the edge of the solar system, into the interstellar sea beyond. The power is fading now, the lights dimming one by one. Soon they will go dark entirely. But the golden record will continue. It is protected by time, untouched by weather, free from dust. It will last for 1 billion years or more, circling the galaxy like a leaf on the breeze. Even now, as you lie here and drift towards sleep, Voyager is moving farther from us than anything ever has. And somewhere, tumbling through space, that golden record still spins gently, carrying the quiet sounds of Earth through the starlit dark. In the middle of Earth's quiet deserts, where the wind writes in sand and the silence is almost as deep as space, humans have been pretending to walk on Mars, not as play or fantasy, but as practice. These desert labs are scattered in places where the landscape feels just a little bit alien, where the rocks are red and dry, where the ground crunches under boots like brittle bone, and the sun hangs low in a sky that forgets to offer clouds. It is here that we rehearse, slowly, carefully, tenderly, each movement planned as though the air is too thin to breathe, because one day it will be. The reason we dream of Mars is not just because it's close, though in cosmic terms it's still quite far. We dream of it because it feels like a riddle just waiting to be solved. Unlike the gas giants or the ice moons, Mars feels almost familiar. It has seasons and winds and valleys and clouds. It once had rivers and perhaps even lakes. And in the soil, in the salt, in the frozen polar caps, there may still be echoes of life. Not cities or signals or shapes in the dust, but life at its smallest. Quiet life. The kind that doesn't announce itself but simply endures. The rovers we send are like slow, gentle explorers. They do not hurry. They roll carefully over rocks, pause to peer at curious textures, and brush dust from ancient surfaces. They carry tools that can see things we cannot. A chemical here, a pattern there, a whisper of methane that appears and then vanishes. Every sample they scoop and every photo they send is another brushstroke in a slow portrait of a world that once might have breathed. Back on Earth, scientists huddle around screens in dimly lit rooms. They drink coffee that has gone cold while waiting for signals that took minutes to cross millions of kilometers. It is not dramatic work. There are no countdowns, no dazzling launches, just a deep, steady patience, a quiet respect for a planet that may be barren or may be secretive. And still the question remains, did life ever exist there? Could it still? In these desert rehearsals, suited figures walk carefully across reddish hills. They carry instruments, mark paths, build mock habitats. And though they know they are still on Earth, they move differently, as if the gravity had already changed. There's a kind of reverence in the slowness. A dream being acted out, not in imagination, but in anticipation. Mars is not just a destination, it is a promise, a possibility, a reminder that even in silence, something might have stirred. So, as you close your eyes and drift into sleep, imagine the rust-red dust under a violet sky. Imagine a tiny rover humming to itself in the cold, pausing before a peculiar rock. And imagine that faraway world whispering something back, so softly that only dreams can hear it. When we think of space, we often imagine it as a vast emptiness, a quiet black ocean with nothing in it but stars scattered like distant campfires. But space is not truly empty, not really. It is sprinkled with the tiniest building blocks of life, drifting through the dark like seeds on a midnight breeze. In the silence between stars, Little clouds of dust and gas swirl gently. They shimmer with carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen. The alphabet of existence, quietly floating in places where nothing should be and yet something always is. These molecules do not shout. They do not glow with excitement or announce their importance. But they are there, patient and ancient. Some are as simple as a two-letter word. Others are more like sleepy poems, made of atoms that curl together and wait. We have found traces of sugars in meteorites. We have found amino acids in the icy tails of comets. We have seen the faint fingerprints of alcohols and acids drifting around distant stars, the ingredients of life scattered in the cupboards of the cosmos. Sometimes these clouds collapse in on themselves, not in a dramatic explosion, but in a long, slow sigh. They form stars. Around those stars, dust begins to clump. Grains become pebbles, pebbles become rocks, rocks become worlds. And woven into the folds of all this is chemistry. Invisible, steady, unavoidable. Life may not need a planet exactly like ours. It may simply need time, a little warmth, a little protection, a tiny drop of something wet, and a place to quietly try. Even in the dark corners of our own solar system, where the sun is no more than a distant glow, these ingredients can be found. On icy moons, in the tails of comets, on rocks that have wandered for billions of years, it is as if the universe cannot help itself. It keeps leaving little notes behind, reminders that life may not be rare. It may be waiting, in millions of places, in millions of ways, not always like us, not always awake, but quietly becoming. Scientists study these particles the way poets study metaphors. They are looking not just for the pieces themselves, but for the stories they might tell. Where did they come from? How long have they been drifting? Could they land somewhere warm? Could they bloom? We do not yet have the answers, but the questions are full of hope. So as you rest now, think of a cloud of dust, turning slowly in the quiet. Imagine a single molecule, light as a feather, floating for 1,000 years before joining something bigger. Imagine that somewhere, far from here, a planet is forming from the same ingredients that once stirred in your own body. And imagine that on that planet, something stirs too. Something simple. Something small, but something very much alive. One warm August night in 1977, a long strip of paper slowly unfurled from a printer at the Big Ear Radio Telescope in Ohio. It was not a dramatic moment. There were no flashing lights or raised voices, just a quiet room and the steady ticking of a machine doing its job. The paper was full of numbers and letters, lines of data that most people would have passed by without a second glance. But one scientist, a man named Jerry Eman, leaned in a little closer. He saw something unusual, a sudden spike in the signal. Not random noise, not background hiss, but a burst. Clear, strong and strange. He circled it in red pen and wrote a single word in the margin. Wow. And ever since, that single word has echoed through the halls of science like a ghost of something never quite seen. The wow signal, as it came to be known, lasted just 72 seconds. It came from a part of the sky with no known planets, no familiar sources, nothing that would explain it. It was like a voice whispered from across the stars, just once, and then disappeared forever. No one has ever heard it again. The telescope was fixed in place, scanning the sky as the Earth turned beneath it. By the time the signal was noticed, the patch of sky it had come from had already passed beyond view. Astronomers turned their instruments back to that spot many times, hoping to catch a repeat. But the sky stayed quiet. There have been many theories. Maybe it was a distant star flickering strangely. Maybe it was a reflection of something from Earth. Maybe it was a satellite. Maybe it was something else entirely. But none of the explanations ever felt quite right. The signal was too perfect, too clean, like a single note from a piano in the middle of a thunderstorm. What makes the wow signal so special is not just the mystery. It is the way it caught us off guard. It reminded us that space is not just a quiet place where nothing ever changes. It can surprise us. It can send something unexpected. And even if it never happens again, the memory of it is enough to keep the story alive. Some scientists still check that part of the sky now and then, just in case. Others have tried to find patterns in old data, looking for cousins of the signal, other blips that might fit. But the original remains alone, like a dropped pebble in a pond that has long since gone still. So as you drift into sleep, imagine a signal traveling across the void, passing through dust and light, untouched for years until it brushes against a lonely antenna on a summer night. Just a whisper. Just once, and then gone, but never forgotten. Far beyond the Earth, past Mars and the asteroid belt, there is a tiny moon that circles a planet of storms. It is called Europa, and it belongs to Jupiter, though it seems to keep its own quiet secrets. To most eyes, it does not look like much, a round, pale orb with lines etched across its surface, like scratches on old ice. But beneath that frozen skin lies something remarkable. Something that scientists dream about, with the kind of hush usually reserved for ancient libraries and sleeping forests. Beneath Europa's icy shell is an ocean. Not a puddle or a trickle, but a vast, deep, global sea, completely hidden, completely dark, and possibly alive. No one has seen this ocean. We cannot drill through the thick crust that holds it like a secret, but we can listen, we can measure, we can watch how Europa wobbles as it orbits. That gentle rocking tells us something is moving beneath the surface, something sloshes, something shifts. Water, perhaps. Salt water warmed by the pull of Jupiter's gravity. Like the moon is being gently kneaded from within, keeping its heart warm despite the cold space around it. On Earth, where there is water, there is life. Even in places that seem completely hostile. Beneath our own oceans, far from sunlight, strange creatures thrive around vents that spew heat and minerals. They do not need sunlight. They live on chemistry alone. Scientists wonder if Europa's ocean might be similar, a place of warmth and shadow where simple life has learned to survive without ever seeing the sky. It is not just wishful thinking. We have seen signs that Europa may be active. Sometimes, enormous plumes of water burst from its surface, like geysers on a distant frozen Yellowstone. They shoot up and out into space, carrying little pieces of the ocean with them. And spacecraft like the upcoming Europa Clipper will fly through those plumes, catching droplets, tasting the chemistry, listening for whispers of something more. The moon itself is small, quiet, and overlooked by most people. But in scientific circles, it has become a place of fascination, a world with an ocean untouched for billions of years. A place where life, if it exists, would be entirely separate from ours. A second Genesis, sealed in darkness, waiting. Europa does not shine brightly. It does not boast or shout. But sometimes, the most profound mysteries come from the places that look the most ordinary. Its icy crust holds more than just cold. It holds possibility. And in that silence, many scientists have heard the same question rise again. Could we find life not by going farther, but by looking under the surface of what we already see? So as you rest now, let your mind drift beneath that quiet shell of ice. Picture the still black ocean below, undisturbed, ancient, and full of dreams. Somewhere in that deep calm, something might be swimming slowly through the dark, unaware that anyone is listening. Venus is a planet wrapped in clouds, thick, swirling, golden clouds that hide everything beneath them, like a curtain drawn over a secret stage. From a distance, it looks soft, even elegant, but the surface is anything but welcoming. The air is heavy, so thick that it would crush a submarine. The ground is hot enough to melt lead, and the atmosphere is filled with acid, floating in layers like invisible storms. Yet even in this strange, smothering place, something unexpected has caught our attention. High in the sky, where the pressure is gentle and the heat gives way to calm, something curious has been found. Scientists have been watching the upper atmosphere of Venus for many years, not just for weather, but for chemistry. And recently, they noticed something odd, a gas called phosphine. On Earth, phosphine is made by life. Tiny bacteria in swamps and the guts of animals produce it quietly. It is not the kind of gas you expect to find drifting through alien skies, especially not in the thick clouds of a planet that seems too harsh for anything to live. The discovery was not loud. There was no great announcement, no sudden revelation, just a pattern in the data, a signal that did not make sense. Researchers checked their instruments, ran their numbers again, looked for other explanations. Maybe it was an error. Maybe it was something purely chemical, a reaction we did not yet understand. But the possibility remained, small and strange, that maybe high in the clouds of Venus something is living. Not like anything we know, not plants or animals, but microbes. Tiny, floating life, drifting in the wind. The idea seems wild, even absurd. But then again, so did life in boiling vents at the bottom of Earth's oceans. So did bacteria that eat metal or algae that bloom in Antarctic lakes. Life has a habit of appearing in places it should not. Quietly, persistently, and if it can survive inside a volcano or under the ice, then perhaps it can survive in the clouds of another world. Venus has long been misunderstood. Once, we imagined jungles beneath its clouds. Then we learned the truth, and we turned away. But maybe we turned too quickly. Maybe Venus still has something to say. Something it has been whispering all along, carried in the wind high above the surface, too faint for us to hear until now. The search continues. Telescopes turn back toward that soft, glowing planet. New missions are being planned, new instruments designed, not to land on the fiery surface, but to listen from above, to search the skies for signs of something small and living, hidden in the gold. So as you close your eyes tonight, imagine drifting through the Venusian clouds, not in a ship, not in a rush, just floating, the air around you warm and strange. And somewhere nearby, something tiny might be floating too, breathing, existing, dreaming in the clouds. Mars is a planet that likes to keep its secrets. It shows us dry valleys and dusty winds, craters as wide as cities, and mountains taller than anything on Earth. But sometimes, between all the silence and stone, it offers something small, a mystery not written in cliffs or rocks, but in the thin breath of its atmosphere, something invisible, but strange. Something that comes and goes without explanation, a whisper of methane. On Earth, methane is familiar. Cows make it, swamps release it, bacteria produce it deep underground. It is the kind of gas that makes scientists sit up a little straighter, because when methane appears, life is usually somewhere nearby. But on Mars, the story is not so simple. The air is thin, cold, and dry. Life, if it ever existed there, would be ancient and hidden. So, when our instruments first picked up methane on the red planet, it raised quiet eyebrows and careful curiosity. What makes it strange is not just that it appears, but that it flickers. Sometimes the methane seems to rise suddenly, then vanish again. One season it is there, the next it is gone. No pattern, no easy cause. It could be geology. Mars has plenty of rock. And sometimes, rocks release gases when they shift or crack or thaw from frozen sleep. But even that does not explain all the measurements. The methane is too playful, too inconsistent, like a shy creature darting in and out of view. The Curiosity rover has a special instrument on board just to sniff the air. It does not hear sounds or see colors, but it can taste the chemistry around it. And now and then, it catches a little bit of methane, as if Mars is exhaling in its sleep. But we still do not know where it comes from, or why it comes at all. It is tempting to leap to conclusions. To imagine little Martian microbes burrowed beneath the surface, alive and well, releasing methane as part of their quiet routine. It is also possible that the gas was trapped long ago and is only now escaping through cracks in the crust. Mars could be replaying echoes of its past, or it could be whispering something new. The beauty of the mystery is not in the answer, but in the way it invites us to keep looking. The methane does not prove life, but it does not rule it out either. It simply waits, lingering like a question in the breeze. So tonight, as you drift off, imagine standing on a rocky hill on Mars. The sky is pink and pale, and the wind brushes gently over the land. Somewhere far off, a rover hums quietly, testing the air, searching for a trace of something more. And as the sun sets in silence, the planet exhales again, leaving us with another soft mystery to dream about. In the quiet spaces between stars, light travels like a gentle tide. Most of it is ordinary starlight, glowing in familiar rhythms, flickering from burning suns too far to imagine. But some scientists have begun to wonder if hidden in all that light, there might be something unusual. Not a voice or a signal in the traditional sense, but a flash, a brief, deliberate blink. A laser, sent not to light up the sky, but to say hello. The idea is simple but dreamy. If a distant civilization wanted to get our attention without sending ships or satellites, they might use lasers. These beams can travel straight and far, cutting through the darkness with precision. A laser could carry information, or it could just be a pulse, a moment of light carefully placed into the sky like a lighthouse beam for someone else to find. We already use lasers for communication on Earth. They bounce off satellites, carry phone calls, scan packages at grocery stores. They are clean, quick, and quiet. And in space, where radio signals can get lost in static, a laser might be a clearer way to talk. It is not hard to imagine a distant world doing the same thing. Not in science fiction, but in the gentle reality of possibility. So astronomers have started looking, not with huge flashing systems, but with calm telescopes and careful eyes. They examine the light from distant stars, pixel by pixel, photon by photon, looking for a pattern that does not belong, a pulse of light that comes and goes too fast to be natural, something that does not flicker like a star or dance like a planet, but blinks once and disappears. It is slow work. There are billions of stars and countless signals. Lasers, if they are being sent, may not be aimed at us. They may not repeat. They may be hidden behind clouds or drowned in the glow of our own Sunday. But the beauty lies in the search itself, in the act of watching, in the belief that someone else might be doing the same. There have been a few curious blips, tiny flashes that made scientists lean forward, just for a moment. Most were explained. A satellite, a cosmic ray, a brief glitch in the detector, but the door remains open. We have not ruled out the possibility. We simply have not yet seen the right flicker. As you rest now, imagine lying beneath a dark sky, stars spread above you like scattered sand. Somewhere far away, maybe on a planet with twin suns or clouds that shimmer green, someone might be watching their sky too. And maybe, one night, a light will blink, not by accident, not by nature, but by design. A soft signal, crossing the stars, patient and bright and full of quiet hope. There is a question that floats quietly at the center of the search for alien life. It is not complicated or technical. It is not wrapped in mathematics or hidden in a telescope's gaze. It is a question that feels strangely personal, even though it is dressed in cosmic scale. If the universe is so vast, and planets are so common, and life seems so eager to begin, then where is everyone? This question has a name. It is called the Fermi paradox, named after the physicist Enrico Fermi, who once asked it during an ordinary lunch. Not a dramatic moment, just a passing thought. But the question has echoed ever since, like a quiet knock on a door that no one has opened. The paradox is not about aliens exactly. It is about silence, about the emptiness we see when we look out into the sky. So many stars, so many chances, and yet not a single sign. Some people imagine it like a party. The universe is the house, life is the music. But when we show up, snacks in hand and heart full of hope, we find no one there, no voices, no laughter, just an open door and empty rooms. Maybe we arrived early. Maybe everyone else is still on the way. Or maybe the party ended long ago and we missed it by 1 billion years. There are many guesses, but no answers. Some scientists think life is rare. That Earth may be one of the only places it ever started. Others believe life begins easily but dies just as easily. That civilizations may rise and fall like waves, never staying long enough to leave a message. And some think the silence is not real at all, that we simply have not been listening in the right way, or that other forms of life might be so different we would not recognize their voices even if they were shouting. There is also a softer thought, that advanced life might choose to be quiet, not out of fear, but out of wisdom, like a village that lowers its lights at night to see the stars more clearly. Maybe they are listening too, waiting to hear a signal from someone else. And maybe, in a strange way, we are all quietly listening together, each one thinking the others must be silent. The Fermi paradox does not close the door on the question, it opens it wider. It invites us to keep wondering, to keep searching, not just for aliens, but for perspective, for understanding, for humility in the face of so much sky. So, as you drift off now, picture a long, quiet hallway filled with unopened doors. Each one leads to another star, another world. Some might be empty, some might be waiting. And perhaps, as you sleep, the universe is still humming with the gentle possibility that we are not alone. We have just not found the others yet. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI as it is often called, is not a loud or flashy project. It does not launch rockets or dig through soil. It does not involve dramatic discoveries or sudden news. What it does, more than anything else, is listen, softly, carefully, and for a very long time, SETI is a project of patience. It is the quiet art of keeping your ears open while the rest of the world goes about its noisy business. Not hoping for fireworks or drama, just listening for something strange and wonderful, carried in a signal from far away. All across the world, dishes turn to the sky. They are not pointed at any one thing for too long because the sky is too wide, too full, but for a moment, they aim at a star and wait. Computers hum quietly, data flows in like a river. Most of it is ordinary, static, earthborne chatter bouncing off the atmosphere, radio fuzz from human machines, but tucked in between those signals might be something else. A pattern, a pulse, a whisper that does not belong to Earth. SETI scientists know the odds are small. They are not listening with expectation. They are listening with hope, like someone who leaves a candle in the window on a dark night, not because they expect a traveler, but because it would be lovely if one ever did appear. It is not wasted effort. It is a kind of kindness, a way of saying that if someone out there is reaching out, we want to be there to answer. The work is mostly quiet. There are no eureka moments, no sudden bursts of revelation, just long stretches of gentle searching. Volunteers help too, from all over the world. People at home lend their computer time to help process the data. It becomes a global lullaby of curiosity, everyone tuning into the same silence, hoping together. And sometimes, just sometimes, a signal catches attention, like a spark in a calm sea. But most of the time, it fades. An echo of a satellite, a reflection of something we already made. Still, the scientists return to the sky, not discouraged, just more curious. SETI is not really about finding aliens. It is about being ready, about preparing a welcome, about asking a question and being willing to wait years for an answer. There is beauty in that kind of waiting, the kind that stretches across decades and does not lose its shape. So as your thoughts begin to drift, imagine a quiet room filled with screens, all showing the same stars, a low hum in the air, a warm cup of something forgotten next to a notebook filled with hope. Someone is listening, and they have been for a very long time. The sky may not answer tonight, but the invitation is still there, floating softly, waiting to be received. Not all life lives where we expect it. Some of it hides in places that feel more like science fiction than science. There are creatures on Earth so small you could miss them with a blink, yet so resilient they seem almost impossible. These are the extremophiles, life forms that flourish in conditions that would destroy most others. They live in boiling heat, in freezing cold, in acid, in salt, in radiation. They do not complain. They do not stretch toward the Sunday. They just exist, quietly thriving in the shadows of what we call unlivable, in deep ocean trenches where the pressure would crush a human like paper. Tiny organisms drift and feed near hydrothermal vents. The water here is not warm. It is scalding, black with minerals. The sun never touches this world, and yet life blooms around the volcanic spouts. No photosynthesis, no plants, just chemistry and persistence. And when scientists discovered these creatures, it changed the way we think about life itself. It meant life did not need a garden, it just needed a spark and a safe enough place to try. There are bacteria that survive in the ruins of nuclear reactors. Some live in Antarctica's dry valleys, where the wind never stops and the ice never melts. Others have been found trapped inside salt crystals, sealed away for thousands of years, still alive, still waiting. These tiny beings do not live fast or loudly. Their metabolism can slow to a crawl, but they endure, and in that endurance is a kind of wisdom, a reminder that life does not always need comfort. Sometimes it just needs patience. When scientists talk about the possibility of life beyond Earth, they often think of extremophiles, because if life can survive at the bottom of our oceans, why not under the ice of Europa? If it can live in acidic pools on Earth, why not in the clouds of Venus? These small creatures are like ambassadors, showing us what is possible, not through technology or intelligence, but through sheer determination. Even the tardigrade, often called the water bear, deserves mention, a plump little thing that waddles through moss and lichen. It can survive being frozen, boiled, dehydrated, even the vacuum of space. Scientists once sent some of them into orbit, exposed them to the harshness beyond Earth, and brought them back still alive. They are not elegant or graceful, but they are nearly indestructible, and in their quiet way, they are explorers too. So as you begin to slip into sleep, imagine a world far away. It might not look like Earth. No forests, no rivers, just rock and ice and silence. And beneath that silence, tucked into a crack warmed by unseen heat, something small stirs. Not curious, not clever, just alive, like a distant echo of the tiny champions we have here on Earth, hidden, patient, dreaming in the dark. For a very long time, we thought our solar system might be the only one. We looked up and saw stars as lights, beautiful but lonely. It seemed almost too hopeful to imagine that those tiny flickers might each have their own planets, their own stories, their own little families of worlds circling quietly through the dark. But now we know better. Now we know that planets are everywhere, more common than we ever dared to believe. Every twinkling point in the night sky might be accompanied by its own set of mysteries. Some hot, some frozen, some strange beyond imagining. But among them are a few that feel familiar. These are the exoplanets that rest in what scientists call the habitable zone. It is not a perfect term. It does not promise oceans or life. It simply means the planet sits at a distance from its star, where water, if it exists, might be liquid, not boiled into steam, not locked in ice, just there, just right, like a cup of tea left to cool on the windowsill until it reaches that perfect quiet warmth. We have found thousands of these planets now, some the size of Earth, some a little bigger. Some orbit stars smaller than the Sun, glowing red like embers. Some whirl through their orbits in just a few days. Others take years. We do not know what they look like. We cannot see their surfaces. But we can measure their shadows. When a planet passes in front of its star, even from light years away, we notice a tiny dip in brightness. Just a flicker, a passing sigh. And from that whisper of darkness, we can begin to sketch a world. Some of these worlds have caught our imagination. One is called Kepler, 186 farads. Another, TRAPPIST 1e. Their names are not poetic, but the ideas they inspire certainly are. These are the planets that might have clouds, that might have rain, that might have seas under starlight, and winds that carry the scent of something green. They may be barren rocks, they may be lifeless deserts, but they may also be cradles. We do not know, and that is part of the beauty. These planets sit in the pages between science and dreaming. They offer no answers, just possibilities, the kind that settle softly in the mind, like stories before bed. So as you drift now, picture one of these distant worlds. Not in full detail, but in gentle suggestion. A planet the color of dusk, circling a calm red Sunday clouds, moving slowly over quiet land. No cities, no signals, just a hush. And maybe, on that faraway soil, something small is beginning to stir. Not for us, not because of us, but simply because the conditions were just right. There was a telescope called Kepler, named for a man who once mapped the sky using only mathematics and dreams. But this Kepler was different. It did not sit on a hilltop or swivel in a dome. It floated quietly in space, a silent observer with one simple job: to watch. It did not search for stars or galaxies. It watched stars it already knew, one by one, day by day, searching for a flicker, a brief dimming in the light, not a supernova, not a flare, but something softer, something steady. The tiny shadow of a planet passing in front of its star. Kepler could not see the planets themselves. They were too small, too far, too faint, but it could feel their presence in the starlight. A small dip, a brief pause, a flutter in the glow, like watching a curtain sway as someone walks behind it. From these shadows, Kepler helped us discover a universe full of planets. It found them in systems that dance closely together, in orbits so tight they would fit inside Mercury's path, around stars cooler and dimmer than the Sunday, and around stars just like our own. The telescope stared at over 150,000 stars and collected their light like rain in a bowl. Sometimes the data seemed plain, just numbers, but hidden in those numbers were worlds. Each dip in brightness meant a planet might be there, turning slowly in its orbit. With every new signal, scientists would begin to unfold a new map. They would measure the timing, the depth of the dip, the shape of the curve. From that, they could guess a size, a distance, maybe even an atmosphere. There was no noise, no color, no images of blue oceans or green hills. Just the quiet math of motion. But in that stillness, Kepler changed how we see the cosmos. It taught us that planets are not rare, they are everywhere. That stars are not lonely, they are surrounded. That the sky is not scattered with light alone, but with the possibilities of life. Kepler watched until its fuel ran out. It drifted gently into retirement, its mission complete, its final signal sent with a whisper. But the worlds it found still spin, and the light it measured still carries meaning. Many of those planets have not yet been explored, some may never be, but others are waiting for a new telescope, a new mission, a new eye to look their way. So as your thoughts begin to float, imagine a planet passing in front of its Sunday, not with sound or fanfare, but like a shadow passing over a candle, just a brief flicker. And far away, a telescope catches that moment and sends it home. A signal, a suggestion, a soft clue that another world is turning quietly under a sky we have not yet seen. Sometimes the story of life is imagined as a flame catching in a dry forest, sparked in just the right place, under the right conditions, and spreading gently until it takes root. But there is another idea, a quieter, older one. It says maybe life did not begin here at all. Maybe it traveled, not on purpose, not in sleek ships or golden pods, but as dust, as microbes, as passengers hidden inside rocks. This idea is called panspermia, and though it sounds like something from myth or science fiction, it has its roots in science and wonder alike. The thought is simple. If microbes can survive in the deep ice of Antarctica, if they can sleep inside meteorites, if they can float in the upper atmosphere of Earth, then perhaps they can drift through space. Not because they were sent, but because the universe is full of motion. Planets are struck by asteroids. Debris flies into space. Some of it travels far, some of it lands again. And if a single microbe is tucked safely inside a shard of rock, then life itself may travel too. We have found meteorites here on Earth that came from Mars. Pieces of that red world, flung into space by ancient impacts, falling through our atmosphere and landing quietly in deserts and ice fields. Some of those rocks carry strange patterns, fossil shapes. Not proof, not certainty, but questions pressed gently into stone. And if rocks can come from Mars to Earth, then why not the other way around? Why not farther? Why not from star to star? The journey would be slow. Thousands of years, millions perhaps. A tiny spore drifting through the cold asleep, waiting for a soft landing on a world with warmth and water. And if it lands in the right place, and the timing is kind, it might wake, It might stretch, it might begin again. Panspermia does not answer where life began, it only shifts the question. It suggests life may be older than any one planet, that it may have started once, long ago, and simply spread like seeds on the wind, some falling into silence, some beginning again. And Earth, in this version, is not the first. It is simply one of many resting places. We cannot prove it yet, but we are learning. We are testing how microbes respond to radiation, how long they can survive in space, how they hide from heat and cold. And each answer brings us a little closer to understanding how fragile and how stubborn life can be. So as you drift towards sleep, imagine a single grain of dust carrying life across the stars, not fast, not bright, just persistent, floating through the dark with no map, no direction, only a quiet determination to begin again somewhere new. And perhaps, long ago, one of those grains found Earth, and here you are dreaming it back into motion. Sometimes, the silence feels louder than any signal ever could. Not the kind of silence that comes with a power outage or a lull in conversation, but the deep, cosmic kind. The quiet that fills the spaces between stars, the pause that stretches across galaxies. For all the signals we have sent, and all the listening we have done, the universe has not yet answered back. At least, not in any way we can understand. We have been broadcasting our presence for over a century now. Radio waves spilling into the sky like invisible echoes. Music, chatter, news, instructions for forgotten machines, all of it drifting outward at the speed of light. It is easy to imagine that someone out there might pick up the broadcast. A strange melody, a voice speaking a language they do not know, a burst of static that once meant something to us. But the farther those signals travel, the weaker they become. They spread out, they fade. They blend into the background hum of the universe. And even if another world is listening, they may not have the tools to hear us, or they might have already passed us by, or they might be asleep, their civilization gone quiet before we even switched on the radio. It is possible we have already received messages and did not recognize them. Maybe the signal was there, buried in the noise, too brief or too strange to stand out. Maybe it came and went while we were looking the other way, or maybe it was not meant for us at all. Waiting is not easy, especially when we do not know what we are waiting for, but there is a kind of peace in it too, a kind of shared solitude. Across observatories and labs and living rooms around the world, people still wait, some with telescopes, some with software, some just with hope. The silence is not a wall, it is a wide open sky, and in its quiet stretch there is room for wonder. Maybe civilizations do not broadcast. Maybe they only whisper to themselves. Maybe they live beneath oceans, never building antennas, never needing noise. Maybe they are so different from us that their messages look like patterns in gravity or flickers in magnetic fields. We do not know. But we are still listening, and perhaps, somewhere else, someone is doing the same. Maybe they are also puzzled by the quiet. Maybe they have been waiting longer than we have. Maybe they think we are the silent ones. So, as you settle into sleep, imagine that vast hush. Not empty, not cold, but full of possibility. Every second that passes is another chance for a signal to arrive, and until it does, we wait. Not alone, but together, across 1,000,000 sleepy hearts looking at the same sky, dreaming of a voice carried gently on the wind between stars. There is a star out there that behaves like no other. It sits quietly in the sky, hundreds of light years from Earth, glowing with a soft, steady light like so many others. At first glance, it seems completely ordinary, but when scientists watched it closely, they noticed something strange. Its brightness did not stay constant. It dipped. Not once, not at regular intervals like a planet passing by, but irregularly, unpredictably, with no clear rhythm. Sometimes the light dimmed just a little. Sometimes it dropped dramatically, like a curtain being drawn partway across a lamp, and then, just as oddly, it returned to normal. This was not the kind of dimming that stars usually do. It was not a blink from a passing planet or the flicker of a sunspot. The pattern was too messy, too strange, and it went on for years. The star became known as Tabby's star, named after Tabetha Boyajian, the astronomer who led the team that studied it. And while it may not have been the brightest or biggest star in the sky, it quickly became one of the most talked about. Scientists love a mystery, especially one that refuses to be solved easily. At first, theories poured in. Maybe clouds of dust were drifting in front of the star. Maybe shattered comets were passing by. Maybe something we had never seen before was happening. And then came a suggestion that was more science fiction than science, but still just plausible enough to whisper about. What if something was built around the star? Not a planet or a comet, but a structure. A massive, deliberate object, slowly harvesting light. Something like a Dyson sphere, imagined decades earlier as a way for an advanced civilization to collect energy from its star. It was not a claim. No one said aliens had done it. But the idea caught fire because of the mystery, because we had never seen a star behave quite like this. And because, in the vast quiet of space, it is easy to let curiosity bloom where certainty fails. Over time, the more dramatic ideas have softened. New research points to clouds of dust that might be unusually shaped or made of material we did not fully understand. The mystery has not gone away, but it has become gentler, less urgent, more a riddle than a revelation, and still the star flickers. Tabby's star reminds us that space is not finished surprising us, that sometimes the sky throws us a question with no answer and asks us to be patient, to wonder a little longer. So as you rest your head, imagine looking up at that distant star, watching it fade and brighten with no warning, not broken, not chaotic, just different, like a distant lantern swaying in a wind we cannot feel. And perhaps, far beyond, someone is watching our sun the same way, waiting for it to flicker, and wondering what it means. For as long as people have looked at the sky, they have seen things they could not explain. Flickers of light moving in odd directions, shapes hovering where no plane should be, bright spots that darted away the moment someone pointed. Most of these sightings became stories, some became legends, a few made their way into government reports, and all of them carried the same quiet question: what was that? In recent years, these stories have taken on a new name. What were once called UFOs are now called UAPs, which stands for Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena. It is a softer phrase, one that avoids the baggage of flying saucers and silver suits. But the mystery remains. Pilots have reported fast-moving objects that defy normal flight. Sensors have picked up things that move without sound, without wings, without the usual signs of propulsion. Footage has been released, black and white and grainy, showing small blips doing odd things in the sky. Governments, once silent, have started to say very quiet things, that the footage is real, that they do not know what these objects are, that more study is needed. It is not confirmation, it is not denial, it is a pause, a maybe. Most scientists are careful with their words. They know how easy it is to misinterpret, how easy it is for the human mind to see patterns in clouds, meaning in noise, stories in shadows. Many of the strange sightings turn out to be balloons or distant planes, or reflections on the camera lens. Some are tricks of perspective, some are still waiting to be explained, but there is still room for curiosity. Because if even one sighting turns out to be something truly unknown, then the story changes. Not in the way movies suggest, not with landings and handshakes, but with a gentle shift in how we see the sky. The search for alien life is usually quiet. It hides in telescopes and algorithms and long radio silences. But the UAP question walks alongside it, more public, more unpredictable. It reminds us that the universe does not always explain itself, and that sometimes not knowing is the most honest answer. We do not have to jump to conclusions. We can hold the mystery like a delicate object, unsure of its shape, letting it be strange without needing to define it. Science does not fear the unknown. It welcomes it, slowly and carefully, step by gentle step. So as you settle into stillness, imagine looking up into a calm sky. A star blinks, a shape moves, then disappears, not threatening, not clear, just there, then gone. A question left behind like a footprint in dew, and whether it was something real or a trick of light, it becomes part of the story, part of our long and dreamy search for something more. When people think of aliens, they often imagine shapes and ships, eyes too large, heads too smooth, metal doors sliding open with steam and light. But there is another way to think about alien life. Not as beings with bodies, but as patterns. Not something we might see, but something we might one day understand. Some scientists wonder if intelligent life does not need to look like us at all. Maybe it does not even need form. Maybe it lives in code. Maybe it exists as a system, as a process, as a long unfolding equation that has been running quietly for 1 billion years. This idea is not easy to picture. It floats beyond our usual metaphors, but it begins with the thought that intelligence might not need cells, that it could rise wherever complexity gathers. In clouds of particles, in networks of magnetism, in the deep hum of matter, thinking in a way we do not yet know how to see. Perhaps, somewhere out there, life exists as software, without hardware. Intelligence carried on pulses of light, or woven into the folds of a nebula, something that spreads not through travel, but through transformation. The universe may already be full of thought that we cannot recognize. It may move slowly, or quickly, or not at all. It may wait in silence, or it may not know we exist. We often assume that contact would mean conversation, but perhaps a message is already out there, encoded in the spin of atoms or the shape of a gravitational wave. Perhaps it is not a signal we should be waiting for, but a pattern we have not yet learned to read. Our computers grow faster every year. Our algorithms learn to solve puzzles that once seemed impossible. What if another world reached this point long ago? What if a civilization moved past biology, past machines, into a form of thought that travels as light or lives within fields? Not robots, not creatures, just intelligence, adapted to the fabric of the cosmos. It is not science fiction. It is simply a different kind of question. What is life, really? What does it need? What could it become? Maybe we will never know. Maybe we are too early. Or maybe, slowly and quietly, we are becoming something similar, as our tools learn, as our thoughts stretch into digital space, as our presence begins to drift not only through rockets, but through data. So as you close your eyes tonight, let yourself imagine intelligence that floats like mist, that thinks in silence, that passes through stars without a trace, It is not something we need to fear or even find, just something to consider, gently, in the quiet space where science becomes story, and where the story is still being written, equation by equation, across a sky full of possible minds. There are moments in space that are so brief, so sudden, they almost slip past us before we know they were ever there. They come as flashes, not of light, but of radio waves. One instant the sky is calm. The next, a pulse races through the void, lasting less than a second, then vanishing. These are fast radio bursts. They do not crackle like thunder or echo like voices. They are more like the sudden click of a switch in a silent room, noticeable, then gone. Their cause is unknown, their source, often distant, their meaning still a mystery. When the first one was discovered in 2007, it puzzled everyone. It appeared in archived data, a blip that had passed unnoticed. The burst came from so far away that whatever caused it must have been powerful. Something bright, something fast. At first, people thought it might be a mistake. Maybe the equipment blinked. Maybe it was interference. But then it happened again and again. Different directions, different times. Always brief, always unexpected. Some of these bursts repeat. Most do not. Some come from known galaxies. Some from empty parts of the sky. We have tried to trace them, to mark their positions, to understand their patterns, and though we are learning more, the puzzle still holds. They could be the sound of collapsing stars. They could be the song of magnetars, spinning with strange intensity, or they could be something we have not yet imagined. The idea that they might be messages is tempting, not words or numbers, but signals. Intentional flashes sent across time and distance, not from beings trying to say hello, but from technologies too advanced for us to recognize. It is not a conclusion, only a question, one that sits quietly in the minds of those who listen. What makes these bursts so enchanting is not their volume or their clarity, it is their suddenness. The sky seems so still, so slow. Stars drift. Planets turn. But these pulses break the rhythm. They remind us that something is moving out there. Something flickers, if only for a breath. In observatories across the world, dishes turn toward the heavens, waiting for the next one. Each burst is logged, studied, compared. Some arrive alone, some come in clusters. All of them whisper the same message. Something happened, and we do not yet know what. So as you lie still now, picture the night sky as a sheet of black velvet. Imagine a thread of sound racing across it. No one sees it, no one expects it, but it moves, silent and exact. For one heartbeat, it is everything, and then it is nothing again, just a trace in the data, just a moment that asks to be remembered, and in that remembering the mystery continues, not loud, not frightening, just full of quiet wonder. Not every place in the galaxy is calm. Some regions roar with the birth of stars, others swirl with radiation, wind strong enough to erase memory. The center of the galaxy is one such place, brilliant and dense, filled with energy and motion, a beautiful place to look at, but perhaps not the easiest place to live. Farther out, the stars grow thinner, the light is colder, the materials needed to build planets become scarce. In between, though, there is a quieter band, a region not too loud, not too empty. This is what scientists call the galactic habitable zone, a space where conditions might allow life to settle, gently and slowly, like dust on a windowsill. It is not a line drawn sharply across the stars. It is more like a soft ring, a place of balance. The stars here are not too crowded, They do not crash into each other or blast out radiation that would tear molecules apart. There is enough heavy material to form planets, enough calm for orbits to last, enough time for chemistry to stretch and settle into something more. Our own solar system rests within this ring, not in the exact center, but comfortably tucked in a spiral arm, circling the galactic core like a quiet traveler who prefers the edge of the crowd. Here, the sun spins slowly, pulling us along with it, turning the pages of cosmic time one by one. Earth formed in this zone, and so, perhaps, did other worlds. Some may be too hot, others too cold, but a few, just like Earth, may have found that gentle middle space where life can try. The idea of a habitable zone is not just about temperature, it is about safety and stability. Life does not need perfection. It only needs a place to begin and enough peace to continue. When the stars are not too violent, when the sky is not too crowded, life can take its time. It can breathe quietly and grow in its own way. Some galaxies may have wider habitable zones, others may have none at all. The shape of the zone depends on many things: the way stars are arranged, the kinds of elements they did produce, the pace of star formation. It is a soft and shifting concept, one that changes as we learn more, but it offers a comforting thought that in the vastness of the galaxy there are calm spaces, places where the conditions for life are not just possible but quietly likely. So as you settle into your blanket and let your thoughts wander, imagine our galaxy from above, a slow spiral turning through black space, and within that spiral, a ring of possibility, soft as a sigh. A place where planets turn, clouds form, and perhaps, on some distant shore, someone else is looking out into the night and thinking how quiet and beautiful it all seems. Imagine, for a moment, a civilization that has solved nearly every problem it once had. It no longer struggles with energy or survival. It does not fear extinction from lack of fuel or lack of light. Instead, it looks to its star and wonders how to embrace it more completely. It sees the sun not just as a source of warmth, but as something that can be captured, something that can be wrapped, not with cloth or walls, but with mirrors and machines. This is the idea of the Dyson sphere. Not a single structure, but a vast swarm of satellites or collectors floating around a star, drinking in its power. The concept is simple but vast. Our sun gives off more energy in 1 second than humanity has ever used. Most of that energy floats away, wasted on empty space. A Dyson sphere would catch it, not to control it, but to use it gently, piece by piece. It is an idea born not out of desperation, but out of curiosity. A thought experiment about what advanced life might do when given enough time and ambition. We have not seen a Dyson sphere. We do not know if they exist. But the idea lingers in the minds of scientists and dreamers alike, because it asks a bold question: what would a truly advanced civilization look like? Would it build bigger cities or travel farther? Or would it turn inward, building slowly around the thing that gave it life in the first place? If such a structure existed, it would change how the star looked from far away. Its light would dim, not in the way that planets do, but in longer, slower, stranger patterns. Some astronomers have even looked for such signs, not because they expect to find them, but because the search itself feels worth the effort. One star, known for its strange dimming, even sparked a brief flurry of excitement. It was not a Dyson sphere, but for a time, it reminded us that the sky is still full of stories waiting to be told. Dyson spheres are not predictions, they are possibilities. They invite us to imagine civilizations that have outgrown struggle and stepped into a kind of quiet mastery, Not loud, not destructive, just wide-reaching and patient. They remind us that technology need not always look like rockets or robots. It can also look like a slow embrace of a star, built with care over thousands of years. So, as your breathing softens and your thoughts drift outward, picture a star wrapped in a lacework of light collectors, not covered completely, but gently traced with the fingerprints of an old and clever species. No messages, no ships, just the quiet evidence of effort and endurance. A sign, flickering faintly through the dark, that someone out there once looked at their sun and thought, "Let us build something beautiful around it." There is a question that floats at the edge of many late-night thoughts. It is quieter than most, not as exciting as finding a signal or spotting a strange flicker of light in the sky, but it is just as powerful. What if we are the first, not the only, but the first to reach this point, the first to look outward, the first to wonder, the first to ask? It is a strange thought because it is both lonely and full of promise. If we are the first, there are no older civilizations watching us, no distant minds waiting to greet us, no silent cities hidden among the stars, just us, still learning, still stumbling, still stretching towards something greater. It means the sky is empty for now, but not forever, because if we are the first, it means others may come later, and what we do now will echo. We often imagine ourselves as late arrivals to a grand cosmic party, but perhaps we are early. Perhaps the lights have only just been turned on. The universe is old, yes, but stars are still forming. Planets are still being born. It takes time for life to emerge, even more time for it to wonder, even more for it to reach the stars. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and humans have only been sending signals for about 100 of those. A blink, a breath. If intelligent life is rare and slow to rise, it is possible we are among the first to take that step into the dark and call out, not knowing who might hear, not knowing if anyone is listening. There is a quiet responsibility in that idea. If we are the first, then we are the beginning of a story, not just a chapter in the middle. We are the ones who plant the seeds, who leave the clues, who carve the path. We may not live to see the others who follow, but we can leave them something to find, a message, a signal, a golden record drifting past the edge of the solar system, proof that someone was here and that they dreamed. This is not a reason for fear, it is a reason for care, for kindness, for curiosity. The universe may be watching us not through eyes, but through time, waiting to see what we become, waiting to see if life can rise gently from dust, build something thoughtful, and look outward with wonder. So, as you close your eyes and listen to the soft quiet of your own breath, picture a dark sky filled with stars that have not yet known company, a galaxy waiting, and one small world, bright and blue, already reaching out, already beginning, not the last to arrive, but the first to say, "We are here." In science, there are questions that glow more brightly than the answers. They shimmer at the edge of thought, not because they are unsolvable, but because they ask us to wait, to wonder, to rest in the quiet space between certainty and curiosity. The search for alien life is one of those questions. We have listened, we have watched, we have asked, and still the stars have not answered clearly. But the silence does not feel like an ending. It feels like an invitation to keep looking. There is a kind of peace in not knowing. It allows the mind to drift, to imagine, to explore possibilities without the pressure of proof. Maybe life is everywhere. Maybe it is rare. Maybe it begins easily and ends quickly. Or maybe it is slow and quiet, just now beginning to open its eyes across the galaxy. Whatever the truth may be, we are living in the moment of the question, and there is something beautiful about that. Every telescope, every signal, every small rover on a distant world is part of this shared curiosity. Even the questions we ask silently in the dark, looking up from backyards or balconies, will become part of the search. We wonder not because we expect answers, but because wondering connects us. It stretches a thread between this world and whatever might be waiting out there, or not waiting at all, just existing silently in its own time. Perhaps the most human thing we do is imagine others. To see a flicker in the sky and think, is someone looking back? That longing is gentle. It is not always loud or hopeful. Sometimes it is just quiet and patient, like leaving the porch light on without knowing if anyone will come. It says more about us than it does about the stars. Not knowing does not mean we are lost. It means we are still traveling, still listening, still ready for surprises. It keeps the door open to wonder and lets the story continue. And that, in itself, is a kind of answer. One that is softer than words, but just as meaningful. So as your thoughts settle and your breathing slows, let yourself feel the comfort of that quiet question. Not a mystery that needs solving, but a lullaby for the thinking mind. There is still time, there is still space, and there is still so much sky left to explore. Maybe one day we will find something, a signal, a shadow, a sign, or maybe the question will linger forever, soft as a whisper in the dark. Either way, we are part of the story now, a story written in light and time and patient dreaming. Rest now. Let the stars continue their silent spinning. Let the question stay open like windows left ajar in the night. The universe does not rush, and neither should we. So, as you drift off and let your mind wander, remember, the search for alien life isn't just about distant planets or blinking signals. It's about us, and the quiet hope that in this enormous, echoing universe, we might not be alone after all. Maybe someone is listening, maybe they're dreaming too, or maybe, in the gentle stillness between stars, the silence itself is a kind of conversation, patient, vast, and full of possibility. Sleep well, and may your dreams be full of oceans beneath ice, signals from the stars, and the soft wonder of a question still unfolding across the dark.